Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Garbage Time Takes. I'm Derek here with my co host Bob today because Dennis will not be joining us for reasons that we'll keep confidential because they may or may not be explicit. Bob, your thoughts?
Dennis, where were you in our time of need? That's all I have to say.
Bob, college basketball conference tournaments are underway.
They are.
Where we are all of 3 days away from Selection Sunday, when 68 teams will determine or will have their fates determined, and the bubble teams will finally get their day of reckoning. Um, might as well start off with my bubble team, the Michigan Wolverines. Their bubble has been popped. They are dead, and I'm thankful that this disgusting season is over. Bob, I wanted to ask you something. I wanted to ask you something
Sure.
about the Michigan Wolverines. Do
Michigan.
you know? Do you know Michigan? Thank you. Do you remember the last time the Michigan Wolverines were not members of March Madness? Can you take a guess?
I'd gotta go maybe early 2000s? 19, I mean, 2015.
2015,
Wow,
Bob.
it seems like they've been in a lot lately.
That's because they have, but people would very easily forget that John Beeline had some major struggles that included losing to the New Jersey Institute of Technology and Eastern Michigan in back-to-back home games in 2015, Bob. Back-to-back games. I remember those games very vividly. They were devastating for, yeah, that would have been senior year of high school,
hmm
approximately.
Sure.
Um, no, did I say 2015? Man, how time flies. That would have been sophomore year of high school. Sophomore year. Um, yeah, John Beeline lost to the New Jersey Institute of Technology at home, which snapped a streak of 30 straight home wins against, I can't remember if it was unranked opponents, unranked non-conference opponents, something like that.
Sure.
And then they lost to Eastern Michigan the following week, and then went on the road to number three Arizona at the McHale Center and got dumpstered there too. So the point in all of me saying is, there's a lot of people out there that want Juwan Howard fired, a lot of Jafraud Howard, a lot of
Mm.
Jathug Howard, a lot of, some Jalan Hollard because he doesn't take any W's. So there's a lot of that going on, but how quickly
hmm
the Michigan fan base
hmm
forgets 2015 losing to the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
True.
Granted, this year's team was a lot more talented than that 2015 team. I went back, looked at the rosters. There's some names you might remember, Bob. Andrew Dockich,
Oh, God.
the son of Dan
Dan
Dockich,
Doggett, yep.
the worst. Karis LeVert
NBA.
suffered a season-ending injury that year. I can't remember if it was a foot, knee, Achilles. It was something like that. Who else was on that team? Spike Albrecht.
Spike.
Spike Albrecht was on that team. Duncan Robinson was, I think he had to sit out because of the transfer rule that year, so he didn't play that year. Um, DJ Wilson was a redshirted freshman that year, so he didn't play that year. And there's a number of other guys. I think Derek Walton was a sophomore. There's a number of guys, but a lot of guys who in 2015, Zach Irvin, Zach Irvin, Bob, I'm sure you remember that name. A lot of guys that were freshmen and sophomores that didn't end up coming into their own until that 2017 run where, what really started Michigan basketball. Because even in 2016, they only beat Tulsa in the first four by 5 points. Tulsa, Bob, the Golden Hurricane. Don't sleep. We only beat them by 5 points in the first four game, and then immediately got eliminated by Notre Dame in the round of 64. So there were a lot of struggles to get to where Michigan was for the past 6 years or so.
hmm hmm
Um, and so I was like, I gotta see what the similarities between this year's team and the
Sure.
2015 team was. There are a couple notable ones.
Okay. All
The
right.
2015 team had to replace Glenn Robinson III,
Mm-hmm.
John Horford, son of Al Horford, Jordan Morgan, and Sauce Castillo. And there might have been one other guy. But
Okay.
Nick Stauskas and GR3 were both drafted. Oh, and Mitch McGary. We lost three guys to the draft after
Sure.
the 2014 season. This year, Musa Diabate, freshman, goes to the draft. Caleb Houston, freshman, goes to the draft. Eli Brooks, a staple of Michigan basketball for the past 5 years, graduates. Devontae Jones, veteran point guard, even though he was only there a year, his experience was highly valued, and the ball never stuck when he was the one running the offense. He graduated. Um, and plenty more that I'm forgetting, not to mention Brandon Johns Jr. transfers, Zeb Jackson transfers, and Frankie Collins transfers. And Jaron Falls, can't forget about Jaron Falls. He graduated. So there's a lot of attrition for this year's Michigan team as well. So that's two things. A lot of production had to be replaced.
Sure.
Number two, both teams were extremely young. I went and counted it. The 2015 team had 12 freshmen and sophomores on the roster. This year's team had 10. And not to mention, none of those freshmen and sophomores had any sort of meaningful playing time last year. I mean, Kobe Buffkin was practically unplayable last year in his limited freshman minutes. And so you have Kobe Buffkin as a starting guard. He's a sophomore. That's basically a freshman. You have Jet Howard, freshman. You have Hunter Dickinson, junior, who obviously we knew what he was going to be. And then you had what you thought was going to be Jalen Llewellyn, veteran transfer point guard from Princeton, and he gets hurt right out the gate. And so now you're starting a true freshman point guard, a true freshman combo guard, a sophomore who's basically a freshman at that point. He had a full offseason to work with, but in terms of playing meaningful minutes, a freshman. And then you had T. Will, who I don't need to slander any more than he's already been this season by Michigan fans. And then T. Will lost his job to Will Cheddar, who was redshirted last year and is basically a freshman. So you had four guys who were playing meaningful minutes, starter minutes, who had no significant minutes last year. Not to mention, your first big man off the bench is who, Bob? Terrace Reed Jr., true freshman. Outside of that, your depth was Joey Baker. Those were the 8 guys. You had 6 brand new or very young players, because Joey Baker was brand new, to go with Hunter Dickinson and Terrence Williams. Granted, again, very talented team, far more talented than the 2015 team was, but very young, very inexperienced, and that is reflected in their 3-11 record in games that were decided by less than 6 points. And so, I think if you had the core, this group of 8 guys playing right now at the beginning of the season, they probably don't lose to Central Michigan. They probably don't go to overtime with freaking Ohio. They don't have a death scare against Eastern Michigan. You probably win one of the Virginia, Kentucky, or UNC games. There's just a lot of things where there was clearly a tremendous amount of growth that this team undertook. I mean, you went to overtime with Illinois and Indiana, 2 of the hardest road environments in the Big Ten.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's extremely disappointing and frustrating, but at the same time, I want to give a little leeway to Juwan for how young his team actually was. Granted, some of that's on him for having so many young guys on the team and taking so many freshmen rather than getting experienced players in the portal, which is why next year I think is his make or break year. because now inexperience isn't going to be an issue. You're going to have Doug, year 2 point guard. You're expecting him to take a big leap. Terrace Reed going to have a full off season with the team, full off season with John Sanderson, the best strength coach in college basketball. He's going to get jacked. He's going to get in shape. Will Cheddar, same thing with him. You're expecting 3 really important transformations for Doug, Will, and Terrace Reed. Uh, I could see Hunter Dickinson coming back. NIL deals.
Sure.
He's not really a pro prospect. I'm sure he's just too slow. Um, Plain and simple. He's not athletic enough to play in the NBA. I don't think. Um, and so he could very well come back with an NIL deal unless he wants to go play in Europe or something. Um, and then outside of that, you hope Kobe Buffkin comes back, but he's a first round grade. Jet Howard, likely gone. He's a first round grade. And outside of that, you've got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores who are going to have an opportunity to really take advantage of this offseason and grow.
So who are your projected NBA
Jet,
names?
Jet, and Kobe.
Jet and Kobe.
Yep. I'm pretty sure they both have first round grades. Granted, Kobe he could probably be a lottery pick grade next year. But I mean, if a team tells you we're going to take you in the first round and you have that first round guarantee and you get the first round money, it's hard to blame a guy for if he wants to go pursue his dream now. Because that's what ultimately, that's what those guys have been working for their whole lives, is to finally make it to the NBA. And if they get a guarantee like DJ Wilson did, like Glenn Robinson did, like Jordan Poole did, it'd be hard to blame them for sticking around.
Yeah, I mean, very thorough, Derek. I mean, quite an up and down year for the Wolverines. I mean, there was a lot of expectation, a lot of hype coming into this season, just based on you have Hunter, who what Hunter is, a walking 20 points a game plus. The typical Big Ten big man that can get it done. Kind of developed a little bit of a long range game now too, which was kind of the next step that he needed to take. And then you got Jet Howard and a lot of athletic guards, highly rated, recruited athletic guards that was something that maybe Michigan teams of old lacked. Maybe it's something that outside of like Trey Burke, you're not thinking of too many highly touted point guards or athletic guards that really were really.
They weren't game changers. They did guys like Derek Walton, Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman,
yep.
Eli Brooks,
but none of them had the ceiling that the players
Xavier Simpson.
Yeah.
Those guys were all very good in their roles.
Sure, but none of them had the ceiling that I think a lot of the guys that are on the team right now have. And not to say that they don't still have that ceiling, but I think people were expecting, in an era where most college basketball players, especially highly touted as some of these Michigan guys are one and dones. They were expecting pretty immediate results, given the fact that you still had, Hunter as an established scorer already.
As a first team All Big Ten guy.
Sure, and but like you said, there was a lot of guys on this Michigan roster this year. That I like to think I watched a fair amount of their games, or at least followed them pretty close. That I just had no idea who they were.
Very young team.
A very young team.
As also evidenced by their 8-man rotation. I mean, you didn't see Isaiah Barnes this year, sophomore. Greg Glenn this year, true freshman. Yusuf Kayat, true freshman guy who came over from Europe. Yep. You didn't see
a lot of guys.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys. And even some of the guys who did rotate, I mean, Will Cheddar was playing maybe 15 minutes a game if he was lucky. Joey Baker was maybe playing 12 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And so it really was Hunter, Terrace Reed, Jet, Kobe, and Doug McDaniel. And that was pretty much and Terrence Williams. And that was pretty much your team right there. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I think like you said, you go one more year on the Juwan Howard experience. I mean, you can't, like you said, and I don't think you're trying to deny, given what the expectation was for this team coming into the season, it was a massive failure. I mean, even with a team that didn't have as high expectations, you still hope to make the tournament.
yeah.
You still hope to be a little bit more competitive than you were. Not drop
Yeah,
against Central Michigan.
you don't expect to miss the tournament when you have two projected first round picks and an all Big Ten center. But at the same time,
Correct,
B. Buffkin before January was not considered a first round guy. He
correct.
wasn't even a guy on the radar. He really came through in that Ohio State game when Jet struggled and Bryce Sensabaugh struggled, and Kobe Buffkin came in and dropped a fat 20 bomb, and scouts were like, "Who's this Kobe Buffkin kid?" And that's really when he started taking off. But definitely, at the end of the season, you wish you would have closed out some of these games like Illinois, like
Yeah.
Indiana, like Purdue, like Iowa. Um, and they didn't.
You know,
It is what it is.
and I think that's the reason that maybe a lot of Michigan fans are up in arms as much as they are, because like you said, not only was there the talent, but the way that you guys seemed to lose was kind of scripted every time.
It was devastating.
It
was
would be
devastating.
right there, overtime games, right down to the wire games where, if one or two things had flipped the other
You
way.
make one shot or get one stop.
Yep. It's just a completely different story. Like you said, you pick up those wins on the road. They're close at the end of the season.
This loss to Rutgers doesn't even knock us out of the tournament. We would be in the tournament if we had won both those games.
Correct.
We'd be in the tournament.
Correct. And even today, you take care of business against Rutgers, you give yourself a fighting chance. You give yourself a coin flip maybe. Assuming that you lose to Purdue, you give yourself a coin flip because you lose to Purdue. Nobody's really batting an eye.
UNC lost.
Yep.
Couple other Wisconsin lost yesterday to Ohio State.
Sure.
I mean, the bubble just absolutely popped for everyone, and Michigan had a chance to take it, and they just
could not.
They got masterclassed by Steve Peichel. I mean, that Rutgers defense is no joke. And that was sort of the theme of the Big Ten this year was experienced teams. I mean, think about Paul Mulcahy's been there forever. McConnell's been there forever. Cliff Omoruyi's been there forever. Then you look at like MSU. That's basically their same exact starting five from last year.
Joey Hauser,
Sissoko, Hall, Hogard, and Walker. I mean, you return an entire team basically. Not to mention you still had Jaden Akins coming off the bench with a second year growth.
Yep.
And what's his name? Pierre Brooks had another year of growth. And so that's another example. Indiana, you have Trace Jackson Davis.
Yeah.
You have Race Thompson. You have Galloway. And then you bring in a 5-star 6'7" combo guard in Jalen Hood-Schifino. And all of a sudden, you're not a bottom feeder anymore. And so, yeah, I don't need to keep going on, but Illinois, also a very experienced team. Purdue's actually the one outlier because they have freshman guards, both of them.
But the guy that really counts, is the same.
Yeah. That's right. Zaki, practically unguardable because he doesn't get called for offensive or defensive fouls.
And he's 7 foot 100.
Exactly.
But Derek, let me, before we kind of move off Michigan basketball, let me tell you some players that I'm excited for you that I think if they, commit to the program long term and, they have a chance to be something special for you. Number one, a player that I don't look forward to facing again, Doug McDaniel. I think he has a chance to be a very annoying Um, it reminds me a lot of Derek Walton in a way. Very short, just very short, but scrappy. Can make
Hmm.
something happen, and has a lot better outside shot than Derek Walton did.
Yeah, his outside shot was actually pretty, it caught me by surprise because he'd have games where
It could get
just
hot. It could get real
yeah,
hot. It
he
did
could light
against
it up.
us. It did against MSU
Yeah.
in the second game.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Uh,
he's no Xavier Simpson when it comes to shooting the three.
I think I am agreeing with your assessment on Terrace Reed. I think he has a chance to
He's
if he didn't look like a deer in the headlights about 80% of the time he was out on the floor. And also, I mean, it doesn't help that he's not playing very much because you have Hunter in there, and Hunter is.
hmm
I mean, you did go to the two. I mean, he's listed as a
the
forward.
thick towers.
He's listed as a forward. I'll call him a center.
Yeah.
The two center lineup every now and again, but he kind of got his playing time stifled by Hunter. And Will Cheddar, I liked Will. I think that
I like Will Cheddar too.
I think for what he was asked to do, you guys, I mean, for the amount of forwards that you have that are supposed to be good and athletic, pretty much all of them were a bust.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
you needed
Williams
somebody.
just
You need somebody to come in there and at least provide competent minutes. And I'll say, I mean, I look at the box score every time, and it's Will Cheddar in there with 0 points, but he had 15. Somehow he played 20 minutes. So that tells me
yeah,
that Will Cheddar is doing a lot of things that aren't really recorded on the stat sheet.
correct.
And so
Correct.
if we can get some of those things to be recorded on the stat sheet, there could be
Which
some.
I think they will be. Because yeah, like you said, he wasn't asked to be an offensive threat. He was out there with Hunter, with Jet, with Kobe, with Doug. He was asked there basically just to go
Yep.
out and be a menace.
Yep.
Be Go get hard fouls, box people out, try and take charges, go for rebounds, and just leave it all out on the court for your 3 or 4 minute spurts.
I think that this team could benefit from, a transfer or two, if I'm being honest. A forward,
Big
a
guards.
competent
Big
forward,
guards. Yeah.
and maybe another experienced point guard
Yeah, they need
to
they
lead
need
the
an
troops.
athletic four. They need an athletic four because as much as I like Terrace Reed, he's more of a five than a four.
At
He's
least an
not gonna
offensive
be.
threat.
Yeah. Um, Will Cheddar, I think shot like almost 40% from three in high school. So like I said, if he just needs a good offseason, get confidence, change his body, get in better shape, and he can be really good. I'm not sure they'll need a veteran point guard because they do have Jalen Llewellyn coming back,
Oh, he's coming
assuming.
back. I didn't know that.
Well, he didn't go through senior day activities, and since he got hurt so earlier in the season, I imagine they're going to try and get him a medical red shirt.
That's
So
fair.
I have a feeling he comes back, but if both Jets definitely gone,
Sure.
projected lottery grade. If Kobe's gone too, they're going to have to bring in a 6'6", 2 or 3, probably a 3, and someone that can shoot because Doug and Jalen are both more point guards than they are shooting guards. Um, it's not really like the Devonte Jones, Eli Brooks, or the Mike Smith, Eli Brooks dynamic where Eli was definitely more of a 2 than a 1. Jalen and Doug are both 1s, so they're gonna have to bring in a 2. They're gonna have to bring in a 3, and they might even need to bring in an athletic 4. Um,
What do you
and
think?
I have met there's going to be some tough conversations this offseason, I think, about guys that are going to be encouraged to move on in the portal. Terrence Williams.
Derek, what do you think? I mean, what do you think you can get out of Jace Howard next year?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. I mean, I know
No.
he came in as a rotation guy. I just didn't know if because he is kind of a bigger dude. Like I just didn't know if
Yeah, he's a bigger guy, but
I mean, his brother's very good. I just said
his brother's very good, but he has a role. It's a very small role, and he likely would not be playing Power Five basketball if his dad wasn't the head coach of a Power Five program.
That's all I
It's
needed
no
to know.
knock.
That's
That's
all I
no
needed to
knock
know.
on him, but I imagine he does a lot of good things for them in practice. I imagine he's a leader. So I have no problem with him being on the team, especially because he doesn't play that many minutes anyway. And I don't really see his minutes going up that much next year unless something absolutely catastrophic happens. I'd like to imagine, believe me, I'd love to see Jace Howard become the next. Hmm, who would I even compare him to? Zed Key. If
Oh,
Jace
sure.
Howard could become the next Zed Key, that would be wonderful. But I just don't really see it happening. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I know he played in rotation, some rotation minutes at times this year. I didn't know if that was going to be somebody you think you would be leaning on for a bigger role going forward.
probably not. Probably not. But yeah, they're extremely young team. I think they're bringing in a smaller class next year. Everyone loves to. One of the things I've been seeing all over Twitter is, you know, young team and the recruiting class next year isn't that great,
Yeah, I was just looking at that actually. Um, you guys have got two recruits signed.
which is perfect.
Two recruits. You've got a 6'2" shooting guard, 4-star, um, and a
Is that George Washington?
George Washington
Yeah,
III,
that's
and
right.
you've got 6'10" Papa Conte, 4
Papa,
star.
and he's like, I have not watched his tape whatsoever. So this is a completely,
Raw take.
raw take. My guess is he's similar to Musa. I imagine he's at 6'10", and I think he's probably on the thinner side. I imagine he's more of an athletic four than a five.
6'10",
Uh,
215 is where they got him at.
yeah, yeah, that sounds a lot like what Musa was. So I could see, you know, some sort of rotation with Hunter and Papa Conte, Terrace and Papa Conte. I don't know how raw his game is. I don't know how polished his game is. So he could be a red shirt. Um, and did you say George Washington 6'2"?
6'2", 165.
Yeah. So again, another shorter
Small.
statue guard. So they need to get a big guard. They need to get, you know, I don't even know. They need to get like a Dwayne Washington type of guard, a Paul Mulcahy type of guard, you know, a guy that's all of 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" at the guard. Um, and what else they really lacked this year was a guy who could go and get his on the drive. Jett Howard, for as good as he is as a shooter, that's all he does. He can't get his own layups. Kobe Buffkin can get his own, but often deferred to Hunter and Jet instead of being more selfish. Doug can finish at the rim, but he's not nearly polished enough to do it consistently. Where you're like, Doug, go get us a bucket, beat your guy 1-on-1. He can do it, but not if there's a lot of tall bodies in the post. So yeah, they really lacked someone who could just like a Terrence Shannon Jr. If Michigan and Texas Tech wouldn't have screwed him over, would have been absolutely perfect for this team. At big athletic wing who can go get layups and when teams start collapsing on him, dump it into the post or kick it to the corner for three and open up the offense. We just didn't have a guy like that this year.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. No,
Terrence Williams tried to be that guy, but those often ended up in turnovers. And
yeah,
he's also not a guard.
yeah. I am. No recruits yet for the 2024 class. I was just looking. Um, well, actually, I mean, there's one commit, but he's another 5'11" point guard.
Christian Anderson. Nope. Christian
so,
Anderson. Yeah.
so good stuff there. Um, yeah, it'll be
So
interesting to
yeah,
see if
it's
you
going to
guys.
be a very interesting offseason.
Yeah, interesting to see if you guys accept the NIT bid. Um, I know that's
I
kind
won't
of
be watching.
up in the air, but
Yeah.
anyway.
I think they should. I think they should more there's nothing that can go wrong with playing competitive basketball. Can't complain about that.
I
But
would agree.
I won't be watching because today's loss to Rutgers, that was the funeral for me. Now I'm moving on. Time for me to move on. Bob, before we move on into a couple other things, Michigan State, Bob, could very well be a dark horse team in the tournament. They're playing well. They found themselves. When they shoot the ball, Bob, when they shoot the ball, just shoot the ball, they're very good. When they don't shoot the ball, they're not very good.
Correct.
Your thought? Just shoot the ball, dang it.
We gotta. I mean, we just gotta get some shots up. It's classic. I mean, it really is classic Tom Izzo basketball going on right here, and it just. I like to say it never fails because it just gets you there every time. But you have a team that just plays sound defense. They will force their opponent to earn it to get past them, and then they're just going to play honest basketball, trying to, a lot of 2-point shots. And that's been the thing about MSU basketball this season is that they have taken an abnormal amount of 2-point jumpers. I believe one of the highest shooting 2-point jumper teams in the entire nation. And we shoot
because
them.
of all the Tyson Walker elbow jumpers that are just automatic.
Tyson Walker, AJ Hoggard, and Malik Hall all love to take the 2-point jumper. But it's really a matter of, can we get a 3-point shot to fall when we need it?
Can Joey Hauser shoot 40%?
Can Joey Hauser show up? Yes. Can Joey Hauser continue to give us 20 points a game, which he has looked capable of doing at points, which is sad because we always know that's who he could be. If because his 3-point
just took him 4 years to get there.
if his 3-point shot was always very highly touted. They always would say, he can step out, he can shoot, and having that stretch 4 like Joey that has a lot of experience. I mean, that the one thing you can say for Joey Hauser is that he is game tested, and Tom Izzo trusts him in the game against some of the toughest defensive assignments. He will put Joey Hauser in there on, and Lord knows he has to quite often play against them because our centers love to find themselves in hack territory and then out of the game.
I mean, Matty Sissoko, just a flagrant fouler.
He just cannot
both
help
in
himself.
flagrant fouls and just flagrantly fouling.
Yes, I agree. Matty Sissoko, flagrant fouler. It will really come down to a couple things for tournament success for my Spartans, both in the Big Ten and in the NCAA tournament. Number one, and without saying, Joey Hauser, like I already mentioned, has to show up. Number two, we're going to have either one of Tyson Walker or AJ Hoggard are going to have to go for 15-plus points a game. Closer to 20, probably. Tyson Walker, I would think, would be the guy. He has the 3-point shot. He's much more able to... He's able to drive, and he's able to shoot. AJ Hoggard can shoot a 3, but I would not like to see him shoot a 3.
Leave that to Jaden Akins.
Leave that to Jaden Akins, who is going to be point number 3 on the list. Jaden Akins and or Malik Hall have to go for double digits, both of them. We're going to have to start going for about double digits. Because Jaden Akins is... I mean, he has really played into himself this year. The man is an extremely good defender. Can keep with most guards very, very well. And he is just a all-around athletic guard. He can really shoot the 3 if tempted, but he's also very bouncy. He rebounds the ball very well. I mean, we've seen some highlight dunks from Jaden Akins this season as well, just getting up and getting over people. And so the scoring out of either that of Malik Hall or him will be absolutely vital. And then going into the final phase, Matty Sissoko, it cannot be trusted in my mind. This was supposed to be the year of Matty
It
Sissoko.
was.
And it
It
looked,
was.
early in the season, it looked like Matty Sissoko.
That Gonzaga game, you thought you were looking at Prime Shaq.
You thought you were... When he flipped the switch, when the light bulb went on for Matty Sissoko, that, 6'10" physical frame, because there's nobody more imposing looking than Matty Sissoko out there, was put to use. When that frame gets to use, it's over. But I will say, I've been...
Unfortunately, he turned the light bulb off after the Gonzaga
Correct,
game.
after about one game. After about one game. But I have been impressed. I have been impressed with our young big men that have been...
Jackson Kohler
has
going to be a problem.
Has looked very good. I will pat myself on the back. I did see that one coming with Jackson Kohler. Was very excited. And even Carson Cooper has looked good in some bursts. When we don't put him out there for 25 minutes a game against the best big men in the country, because he is 6'11", I mean, he is a massive dude. But when we give him reasonable assignments, he will deliver. And Jackson Kohler, like you said, looks like he could be a bit of an offensive problem for teams going forward. Not that I would expect him to have too big of a role, but you know what? When you get into tournament time, anybody that's coming in off the bench that can give you anything, you're looking for them to deliver the goods. And he could be a guy that could deliver the goods. But it's going to take a classic complete effort from this team. And that's how it normally is. I mean, we've had a few outliers with the likes of, Cassius Winston, trying to lead squads and things like that. But besides that, even when we've had some of our more star players, it's been more complete efforts. You were looking for a lot of complimentary guys that weren't quite notable names to give you something. The Matt McQuaids of the world.
The Tum Tum Nairns.
The Tum Tum Nairns of the world. Guys like that to kick in. The Kenny Goins of the world.
The Matt Costellos.
The correct. Guys like that to...
Kenny Goins. Screw that.
To kick in and deliver, shape up. Because that's what it's going to take. I mean, who knows what could happen next year? I mean, Joey Hauser technically could be back again.
I Googled it just because I wanted to see how Joey Hauser was playing over these last 10 games, because I know it had been pretty good. Joey Hauser says he likely will not be coming back next year. He's already kissed the floor twice. He doesn't think he's going to do it a third time.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
It ain't over till it's over.
You never know, but he felt, from what I read, the article I read, he felt pretty good about this probably being his last run. But Joey Hauser shooting 46% from three. I mean, come on. Over 50% over the last 7 games. Dude's just on fire. And he's got to carry it.
Better late than never, because we've, as Tom Izzo has said with a variety of players, but most famously Russell Bird way back in the day, if anybody remembers that name, which
do not remember Russell Bird.
You shouldn't unless you're a diehard MSU fan like me.
Actually, I do remember Russell Bird because you'd bring him up at least once a year during the college basketball season. Is he the dude that came in and hit a 3?
And shot down the Hawkeyes, yes.
Against Iowa, yes.
And there was a famous line after that game, which I'm going to quote now, which is why I bring him up. And Joey Hauser, it applies to Joey Hauser. And after that game, when Russell Bird famously shot down the Iowa Hawkeyes, Tom Izzo was interviewed after the game, and he said, we've been having a talk with Russell recently, who was supposed to be something. He was highly recruited, supposed to be a very good player. We've been having a talk with Russell recently about return on investment. As in, we've invested a lot in you as a program, and we need some return on that. Well, the MSU program has invested a lot of capital into Joey Hauser, and it's time that we start getting some return on that, and we've started to see that recently, which, thank the good Lord. But I know that this team is going to lose, likely, like you said, Joey Hauser, likely, Tyson Walker's done as well. So those are 2, leader guys, and then you got Malik Hall, which I'm not sure if he's still got technically a COVID year that maybe he can burn.
I think so.
But
I think so.
but he did undergo senior day festivities, so you never know. With that. But those guys, are a big presence on this team, and I'm hoping that we will be able to see something. I'm not quite sure where we'll be seated. I think that can kind of depend on how.
7. My guess is 7.
I agree, unless we stun somebody in the Big Ten tournament that we probably shouldn't. I'd say we probably right around there, but that gives us an opportunity to maybe get a round of 32 matchup, assuming we can take care of the round of 64 matchup. But the 7-10 is notoriously upset prone.
Correct.
But assuming we make it around to 32, gives us a nice opportunity to maybe pick somebody off that we wouldn't have had the chance to otherwise. So I'm excited about this team. I really hope it just like you were saying, Derek, it turns into guys that we've invested a lot in. Really, taking that final step for the program. If they're not coming back, at least seeing them playing at their best. When they were leaving, that they've transformed into something. It will be sad, if they go, but if we go down with them, playing good ball, then we can't.
That's all you can ask.
We can't complain too much, and it'll be a nice send off. Especially with next year, some sizable recruiting class coming in. Hopefully, looking to keep the success going, but very, very excited. Hopefully tomorrow we don't lay an egg against Ohio State. We just beat them like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can do it again.
Well, Bob, there's one player you can count on returning. You know who that is?
Steven Izzo.
Steven Izzo has declared he will be returning another season for Michigan State basketball.
Oh, always
he's coming back.
Always the fan favorite, Steven Izzo.
Correct.
Get him in the game.
Bob, one last thing before we move away from college basketball.
Yes.
Dennis was so kind to give us some thoughts.
Sure.
On Villanova and UC, Bob. Then I believe you have those.
Yes, I do have some thoughts about UC. I was, as people might not know this, that they're college basketball fans, but the American Conference actually does have a conference tournament. Nobody watches it, but they do have it, and they do get a bid to the NCAA tournament if they do win it. But so technically UC could make the tournament if they win the whole thing.
Correct.
Tomorrow they will be playing. They're the 4th seed in their tournament. They will be playing against the 5th seed Temple, the Temple Owls, who
notorious historical juggernaut, the Temple Owls.
Correct. And who the Cincinnati Bearcats split with this season, 1-1. The Temple Owls, you might famously remember, Derek, knocked off Houston.
They did
this season. Won by 1 point, but they did manage to knock them off in a thriller. I texted Dennis, and I think that I'll make this sentiment clear to everybody in the pod that the Cincinnati season will end tomorrow against Temple. Looking at it further, Temple has not exactly been playing hot recently. However, I'm still backing them. Because
Temple's won 3 out of the last 4.
However, I will, most recently I'm seeing that they lost to Tulane, which is rather concerning. And they also did just lose to Cincinnati on February 22nd, so they're not too long ago. But you know what? What man would I be if I didn't back Temple to beat
Correct.
Cincinnati? I also got a message from Dennis on the matter when I told him that it was over. And Dennis wants me to make sure that it's recorded that this is a famous Dennis no chance moment.
And that Charles Barkley guarantee.
And he's basically putting down the Charles Barkley guarantee at Cincinnati will get past Temple tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So, Lord have mercy if they lose, because he will be hearing about it. We also would like to give a shout out to the ECU Pirates, who are still in the American Conference Tournament. Derek and I are always backing the ECU Pirates. Hopefully they can go out and stun the world tomorrow because they've got a matchup with the number 1 seed, Houston.
Correct. And let's not forget, we must remind the viewers, Dennis did once confuse the UC Bearcats fight song for ECU's fight song. So Dennis,
unforgivable.
Certified closet ECU fan who couldn't recognize his own fight song. What can you say?
I mean, he's clearly not imagine being a diehard fan of an institution and not even knowing what the fight song sounded like. I mean, have you ever heard of that, Derek?
That would be like me confusing Michigan's fight song for Purdue's,
Nebraska,
Iowa's, and I think Eastern Carolina is a little bit higher on the tier list than Nebraska is. I was trying to think like a middle of the road program for both football and basketball, and I feel like that's like Purdue. But yeah, regardless, it would be like me
doing that,
or you even confusing MSU's fight song for Indiana's or Illinois.
You just can't do that.
Unforgivable. Last thing for Dennis, because I had sent that message about how Michigan, UC, and Villanova were all projected into the same region of the NIT bracket. And Dennis said, and I quote, "I ain't giving up yet. UC and Nova both alive. Just a few more games to win." End quote. Villanova is currently down 55-38 with 12 minutes left to go in the second half of the Big East tournament game against Creighton. So I think Nova's cooked. Villanova's cooked. And tomorrow, the Temple Owls might cook the Bearcats as well. And if Temple doesn't do it, Houston surely is going to. So Dennis, I'll see both of your teams in the NIT. Last team, I'll talk about Arizona quick, just because that's my other school. Fortunately, I do have one school that will be in the NCAA tournament. Probably going to be a low 2 seed or a high 3 seed. I imagine if they make the Pac-12 championship game but lose, they'll probably be a low 2. If they lose before that, might be a high 3. We'll see. Do not pick Arizona as your dark horse. They turn it over way too much. They don't rebound well enough. And if they go ice cold, they go ice cold. So do not pick Arizona to go farther than the Elite 8. It's not nearly as good of a team last year that lost Dalen Terry, Benedict Mathurin, and Christian Koloko all to the draft. And yeah, they just turn the ball over too much. And they really don't play that good of defense. I believe they gave up 84 points to Stanford today in their Pac-12 game that finished only a short while ago.
Did they win?
They did. They won 95-84. Yeah. To a team that only has 14 wins on the season. So they like to play fast. They like to play loose. But unfortunately, that can lead to a lot of turnovers. Today, they actually only had 11. But they gave up 8 offensive rebounds. So and they allowed Stanford to shoot 14 of 29 from 3. So like I said, they don't really play defense, but they can shoot the lights out with the rest of them. But when they can't shoot, they're toast. So keep that in mind when filling out Arizona in your brackets. If they play a team that is very low in offensive efficiency or low in points per game, they'll probably wipe them just due to the pace they play with. Sure. But if they get against a team that is efficient defensively, like TCU was last year, gave them a scare, and then they faced the best defensive team in the country, Houston, the game after, and got put in a locker, they're going to struggle. So keep those in mind when you're filling out your brackets for U of A.
Good stuff there, Derek. Good stuff.
That was a good segment. It's too bad Dennis couldn't be here to enjoy it with us, but I imagine it wouldn't have been too enjoyable for him to talk about both of his NIT-bound teams. So what can you say? Who knows, Bob? Is it one last thing about the tournament. Is it not a disgrace that the MAC does not allow all 12 teams to compete in the MAC tournament? Did you know that?
I did
Did you know
not.
CM? I didn't know that until today. I was like, oh, I wonder if CMU got blown out in their MAC tournament game yet. They didn't even get a chance to play. Only 8 of the 12 teams and the MAC get to play ever since COVID, because I guess the MAC had to reduce their uh, budget for hosting the MAC championship games. So they cut back on the amount of teams that are actually allowed to compete in the MAC tournament, at least until through next season. So yeah, the Chips didn't even get a chance to,
Show their
you
stuff.
know, yeah, their 3-13 conference record or whatever it was. Horrible, absolutely horrible. Um, but yeah, they did not get a chance to compete. Who knows? They could have went on a miracle run. They did beat Michigan after all. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was that's actually been happening since 2020. I didn't even realize it, but is that not a crock, Bob? Is that
That
not a
is a
crock?
crock. Every team deserves a chance.
I agree. I mean, look at the conference Gonzaga plays in their conference tournament. I'm sure everyone's seen the bracket by now, but like the top 6 teams all get buys and they just play 2 games at a time all the way up until the end. It's super ridiculous and super goofy. Um, but yeah, unbelievable that the Fighting Chips did not get a chance to claim the auto bid for the MAC. Unbelievable.
Correct.
Spring training, Bob. We're right in the thick of it. The Tigers and Cubs, I both think have winning records in spring training, which really doesn't mean much of anything. But hey,
But it's
they're
better than a
winning.
losing record.
It is better than a losing record. Additionally, we have the World Baseball Classic, and this is what really sucks about not having Dennis here, because I'm sure we would have had a great discussion about the World Baseball Classic. But Team USA has got one of the most stacked
It
lineups
looks
in all
good.
of
It looks
baseball
real good.
history. They did lose the exhibition game yesterday to the San Francisco Giants, which is kind of embarrassing that our self-proclaimed best team in history scored 1 run against the San Francisco Giants spring training staff, um, headed by none other than, I want to make sure I get it right. Oh, who was it? Who was their pitcher? Oh my gosh, this isn't helping me either. None other, here we go, that's who it was. None other than former Cincinnati Red Anthony DeSclafani.
Oh,
Bob.
God.
Anthony DeSclafani gave up 1 run, one single run to Team USA's stacked lineup.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. But yeah, that should be really cool. The USA versus Mexico game is actually being played in Phoenix. I checked the ticket prices. I think it's like $86 to go the last time I checked,
You sure
because
we
I
get
was
in?
tempted. I was tempted. I was like, ooh, if it's less than like $60, I'll think about it. But it was $86, and now the cheapest I can find is $90. So I likely will not be headed to Chase Field to see the Mexico versus United States World Baseball Classic game, but I'll definitely be watching. Bob, will you be watching the World Baseball Classic?
I definitely will be following it. I've been looking at the lineups, having a fun time seeing who's coming out to play.
A lot of fantasy baseball keepers in that lineup, Bob.
No kidding. No kidding. Can't wait for that to fire back up because that will only make our baseball segments all the more spicier on
Correct.
this show. Um, Not
Yeah,
true.
we haven't had a chance to roast Dennis for getting fleeced on the pod because
He's avoided my
just wasn't
wrath.
happening.
He's avoided
He
my wrath
has.
on the pod. Um, but not to cut the baseball segment short, Derek. But there was a question a topic I wanted to bring to you. Um,
Okay.
and maybe you were going to bring it up yourself later, but I've been thinking about it. I've been reading a lot of articles. I've been surfing through the interwebs, and it's coming up quite a bit. And I need your take on it, Derek, as an expert in this field.
Okay.
Derek, what are your thoughts on the rumors of Lamar Jackson to the Lions?
Um,
I've been seeing quite a few articles, even some sports books that have us as the favorite spot for potentially Lamar Jackson to land after that non-exclusive tag was placed on him by Baltimore just a day or two ago now. The Lions being a big rumor mill.
to quote Donald Trump, fake news. I think there's a 0% chance the Lions land Lamar Jackson. Uh, Brad Holmes has been very unwavering in his undying support for Jared Goff. Unless they were to find a team that before they even signed Lamar Jackson and they went to a team and said, what'll it take to get a Jared Goff deal done? Um, there's no chance. There's no chance. They can't have both Jared Goff and Lamar on the roster at the same time. Jared's cap hit is way too high just to cut him this year if we want to use that money on other things that are more important, like the defense. Um, yeah, there's just no chance. And there's also no chance that we would be trading Jared Goff to a team that would require us to give them picks to take on his contract. Just not happening. Um, so yeah, I I really don't know what Lamar Jackson would bring to Detroit. Um, that would be anything more valuable than what Jared Goff has done. Um, because as we both like to point out, the best ability is availability, and Lamar has had a trouble staying available when it matters most, which is towards the end of the regular season and in the playoffs. So maybe that's a fault of the Baltimore Ravens training staff that got an F minus. I don't know if
I
you saw
saw
all those
that. I
player
saw the
grades that
grades.
came out.
Yeah.
So perhaps he's just a victim of the Ravens' terrible training staff. Um, but the fact of the matter is, I just don't know what elements he would add to our offense that are needed. Yes, it'd be cool to have a quarterback that can extend plays and give defenses a different look. But like I said, I'm Jared Goff's harshest critic, but he played very well for us last year. There are definitely throws I wish he would make and I wish he would take. I wish he wouldn't only throws to guys who get wide open. I wish he would throw them open. But he played within himself and he led us to a winning season, a near playoff berth with a receiving core that was banged up all year and really only has one true star right now with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Um, Jameson Williams can get there, but with
Hasn't seen it
the
yet.
lack of with the lack of chemistry he had with Jared Goff due to coming into practices so late, you couldn't expect them to just turn into Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase right off the bat. So yeah, I'm you don't need the Ravens won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, and I like to think Jared Goff is a lot better than Trent Dilfer, and he's already been to a Super Bowl, which Lamar Jackson has not. In fact, Jared Goff has more playoff wins than Lamar Jackson. So I think that's horse hockey. And if I could bet against the Lions being the ones to get Lamar Jackson, I would.
Very, very fair point. And I'm on the same page as you.
Bob, have you ever heard me praise Jared Goff so much in
I
5 minutes in a 5 minute span?
I have not. I even going so far as to use the phrase horse hockey, which is one of my favorites. Um, yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. Although I will say I am surprised that we've not seen any team really express any interest. I thought with the non-exclusive tag that there would be at least one team There's a sucker born every minute. I thought there'd be one team, especially the Atlantas of the world, that would have taken a shot on him, because the franchise hasn't really had much success recently, and especially with Atlanta's case, you've got like the second coming of Michael Vick, with Lamar Jackson. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think the Ravens kind of maybe, dare I say, knew what they were doing by putting the non-exclusive tag on him and just saying, you know what, you want to give him a contract? You want to give us 2 first-round picks? Be our guest, because we don't think that there's a market for you, Lamar Jackson. At least, not when you're completely free. And if you want to hold out, you can be our guest.
Correct.
Because you're under contract, you're gonna have to play for us for another year. So I'm very interested to see how that scenario turns out, because I think we're heading towards holdout personally at the moment. But I just wanted to get your take, because I've been seeing a lot of rumor mill material going around this offseason with the Lions, especially because, for once people are saying, recognizing us, Derek, as a up-and-coming,
Correct.
team, that maybe would be looking to make some moves. A lot of Jalen Ramsey talk, out there with the Detroit Lions, a lot of open recruiting, dare I say, of
there has been
Jalen Ramsey, which we all know that we've had some secondary struggles. Can I get your quick thoughts on Jalen Ramsey?
I'm not opposed to it for the right price.
Sure.
That's what it always comes down to, because the way I think about it is this. The nice thing about having, I don't know, a corner drafted in the second or third round, or even the first round if we choose to take one at 17, I don't think it'd be wise to take a corner at 6. I'd like to get either a lineman or a linebacker there. But if you take a corner in the first round, the real upside to that is having the contract control of a rookie deal for 5 years. That's the real nice thing about having a first-round pick. The flip side is you have Jalen Ramsey, who is bona fide first-round guaranteed talent, but you're paying him at the cost of his second contract.
As a guy that's been there and done that.
Exactly. So that's one of those things where it's like, do you take the known commodity, or do you take the risk on the guy who has the upside and also the contract control? So that's why I think for the right price, I don't really know what that price is, to be honest with you. I don't know what I would see and be like, oh, that's way too much, or man, we fleeced them. But I would not be opposed to it. I saw a lot of people saying that they wouldn't want Jalen Ramsey because of the culture. You almost kind of need one of those guys like Jalen Ramsey, a guy that's just a dog, a guy that's going to go out there and get in the offense's head. I don't perceive him as some sort of locker room cancer. He's not like an Antonio Brown diva or a Le'Veon Bell diva or a Juju Smith-Schuster attention hog. Or a Chase Claypool diva. He's not like one of those guys. And so I don't think he would mess with the culture at all, because I think those guys would get on him pretty quick if they didn't like what he was doing. But I mean, just speaking of the Rams in general, Bob, did you see Matt Stafford is available to be traded now as well? Those reports came out today that I think it was some anonymous NFL exec said that the Rams want to trade Stafford if possible. So that makes Matt Stafford, Bobby Wagner, and Jalen Ramsey all available. And they already cut. Who did they cut?
I thought they cut Bobby Wagner.
Did they cut Bobby Wagner? Is that what they did?
Because there was a lot of people saying that the Lions should sign Bobby Wagner. To solidify the linebacking core.
Yeah.
There's actually been a lot of good players, or at least guys that were like maybe in their prime 2 to 3 years ago, that have been cut at the linebacker position. So I will say, I think the Vikes cut a guy too. That was pretty.
Yep, they cut Kendricks.
That was
They
pretty
cut.
pretty notable. Yep.
Um, yeah, Bobby Wagner, I believe, is available. Eric Kendricks is available. Um, Bud Dupree is available. And oh, who did Tennessee just release? Oh, who did they just release?
They released Taylor Lewan.
Oh, thank you. Oh, the Titans were planning to release Bud Dupree. There's one other name that I'm thinking of.
They released Robert Woods.
Yeah, we definitely do not need Robert Woods.
And they released Randy Bullock, Derek.
Oh no, Fat Randy getting the cut. Man, who got released?
But anyway, yeah, there's just been a lot of guys like like Kendricks and like Bobby Wagner who have been released this offseason and who actually provide extremely intriguing stopgaps for the Lions at linebacker. Because
Frank Clark got released.
That's
he's not a linebacker, but he's
another big one.
An edge rusher.
That is true. He is an edge rusher and a very notable edge rusher.
Correct.
So it's just interesting to see if the Lions will take a shot on one of those guys. Considering that, I'm sure they're going to try to address some linebacker positions in the draft. They're going to try to look for some young guys, but it never hurts to have somebody like Bobby Wagner in the locker room.
Correct.
To, show the Malcolm Rodriguez's of the world, to show, some of these new guys. I know we have Alex Anzalone in there as kind of like a leading figure, but Alex Anzalone was never the player that Bobby Wagner was.
Correct.
So, let's at least explore the option. Since these guys have been just flat out released. So it didn't hurt to look into it, especially, and you gotta wonder whether the Lions, are taking that kind of stuff into account when they're looking at who they're drafting. Maybe they can try to bring in the guy for a year or two, and they try to address, the secondary first, and then try to go for a linebacker push next year or whatever, or a free agency. It's just really interesting. So, just wanted your quick thoughts on some of the free agent news, because it has been. For once, we're not talking about getting the bargain barrel scraps here. We're talking about getting some guys that actually have some name recognition around the league.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, speaking of, I was going to bring this up too. Geno Smith, Bob, got paid. And the worst part about that is that resulted in Daniel Jones getting $40 million. I was going to save this for winners and losers. But winners,
Daniel Jones,
Derek Carr, Geno Smith. Average and arguably slightly above mediocre quarterbacks getting paid massive money. Massive money. Geno Smith getting $35 million a year. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Daniel Jones getting 40? I mean, Jared Goff's deal looks like a bargain.
No, I was going to say that, but that also makes me very concerned for when Jared Goff's money comes due, because, we've got him for what, this season?
I think we've got him for 2. I think we've got him for 2 if we want him.
Two if we want him. What is that, a team option or something like that, probably?
Yeah, not necessarily a team option like what you would think of as the NBA as a team option.
Sure.
But more so that our dead cap hit
wouldn't be okay.
Decreases over the next couple of years.
Okay, so we could actually just straight up release him and barely take a hit.
Yeah, he becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2025. So we've got this season and next season of Jared Goff if we want him.
Yeah, but just looking forward, because if Jared Goff does prove to be somebody this season that can take us places, you could probably want to look to, maybe, re-up for a little bit.
You're going to want to,
extend.
If the Lions if the Lions win the North this year with Jared Goff playing at a top 10 level, they're going to want to extend him this year.
Immediately.
Before, because I'm pretty sure, correct myself if I'm wrong.
You got Joe Burrow coming down the pipe. You've got Justin Herbert coming down the pipe, and now and the problem is that you've seen, like I was getting, my ultimate point was going to be, you've seen quarterbacks like Geno Smith, like Derek Carr. You know, a lot of these guys that are brought up in the same tier as Jared Goff. You know, like you said, Derek, the mediocre. I mean, even though Jared Goff didn't play mediocre this year by really any metric. He played a good season.
He's top 10.
Yeah, he played a very good season. But the guys that are often thought of around Jared Goff, getting that kind of money, gosh, that is just exorbitant, and it makes it hard for guys, especially like Geno. Hopefully Geno can put it together again. But even Danny Dimes, especially, to live up to deals like that. Like that deal, I have a feeling in a year or two, that deal is going to look at like one of the worst deals in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
And, you know, it's maybe even the same for Derek Carr. And I like Derek Carr, but it's, you know, what has he proved, you know, to be worth that money, you know, at this point? It's just kind of scary for teams that are, you know, riding with mediocre quarterbacks, especially when the age of, you know, moving towards more fully guaranteed deals is kind of coming upon us.
Yeah, here's the quarterbacks that will be signing new deals or extensions very soon. So Dak will be a free agent in 2025. Aaron Rodgers in 2025 if he doesn't retire first. Jared Goff in 2025. Geno Smith is actually only extended through until 2026. Trevor Lawrence will also be a free agent in 2026. Joe Burrow, free agent 2025. Kirk Cousins, 2024. Trey Lance, 2026. And Tua in 2025. And Justin Fields in 2026. So in the next 3 years, the quarterback market is going to see a drastic increase in price. So here's hoping that the Lions get an extension done before Joe Burrow gets an extension done. But also screw the Seahawks and the Giants for paying mediocre quarterbacks elite quarterback money, because Jared Goff's price is only going to go up if he leads us to an 11-5, 12-4 season next year.
But
granted,
yeah,
he'll be 31. So you're likely looking at, I don't know, 4 or 5 year extension. So maybe they can, bring it down a little bit because of his age. But also Geno Smith isn't a spring chicken either, and he got paid $35 a year. So
you have to wonder. I mean, you hope Jared Goff is the guy, but you got to wonder if they look at that contract as, you know, like you said, potentially more stomachable for a lot of teams, and think maybe we can get some good value because, you know, you flip Jared Goff to a team. Like I said, this would be a risky move. Like they'd have to. This would be, you know, given the caveat that they didn't think Jared Goff could be the future of the franchise. Which there's a lot of Lions fans that have been, you know, preaching that mentality. So, you know, maybe, you know, who knows? They've been saying, you know, we need to draft a quarterback. You know, I've seen a lot of Anthony Richardson hype, you know, going around. You know,
speaking of, not to cut you off, I saw someone say that, I don't know if it was an NFL exec that said this, that Anthony Richardson is Justin Fields and Cam Newton combined. Do people forget the type of player Cam Newton was in college?
He was insane.
Undisputed Heisman winner.
Insane.
National champion. One of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. Up there with Tim Tebow. Cam Newton was unstoppable in college. And he could throw the ball. Anthony Richardson
cannot throw
the ball. So I don't care how high he can jump. You're not going to put him out at wide receiver, are you? No. So, yeah, I just had to get that off my chest. I don't know how these sort of narratives get created, that Anthony Richardson, I don't know if these are smoke screens. I don't know if he has the best agent in the world paying people off. I don't understand how this stuff happens. But his tape sucks, and he was a mediocre college quarterback.
Yep.
I,
Below
I just
mediocre.
I don't understand where all of a sudden he's just going to flip a switch in the NFL.
Yep.
Um, Same thing with Will Levis.
Yep.
Will Levis has not impressed me whatsoever.
Yep.
Dude couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State. Sean Clifford, Bob, could not beat him out at Penn State twice. It's baffling. Absolutely baffling. But yeah, I had to get that off because I think the Anthony Richardson hype is
Unreal.
horribly overblown. Horribly overblown.
Yeah, but if they did decide that Jared wasn't the guy, maybe that makes his contract a little bit more appealing. They could trade him and get some good value because not only is he been playing well, but you have a contract that's pretty favorable given his level of play compared to guys that are now making $40 million a year and haven't had nearly the success. Because even though it was on a different team, he, like you said, has been to a Super Bowl, has won playoff games, as the starting quarterback of a team, which neither Derek Carr nor Danny Dimes can say. So that only makes his value more. So
very few quarterbacks can say they've played in the Super Bowl in the last 7 years.
Correct, and he is
Jared
one of them.
Goff's one of them.
So very, very interesting. I'm so excited for the draft. I'm very excited.
As am I.
Very excited for these things to kind of fall into place. But keep an eye out, Garbage Time Take listeners. On the Lamar Jackson situation, on some of these free agents that have now been released. That, are slightly past their prime, but they still might have a little bit of juice left in the tank. Especially for a defense of the Lions that has a lot of gaps that could certainly be shored up, and some depth could be appreciated, or some veteran leadership could be appreciated.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we don't need Jalen Ramsey to be the corner he was 4 years ago. We just need Jalen Ramsey to be better than replacement. That is all we need. We just need him to be better than Amani Oruwariye.
Which is not hard to do.
Which is not hard. So yeah, I mean, if you're Brad Holmes at Dan Campbell, you've got to be so excited about what we can do this year because we have cap room and we have picks.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've got a lot of options. And as long as they don't take a guy with a 5th round grade in the 2nd round, I will trust Brad Holmes because he has not led me astray thus far.
Sure, correct.
Except for maybe giving Michael Brockers that extension and then cutting him this year because he was unplayable. But outside of that, I'll pin that on some of his Rams bias. Had a little bit of Rams bias for giving that to Michael Brockers, but didn't hurt anything. But yeah, I got full trust in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, whatever they decide to do, as long as it's not taking a tight end in the first 6 picks or a kicker. What? Outside of that, or a quarterback. Please don't take a quarterback at number 6. 17. If we take Anthony Richardson at number 17,
I will be mad.
Would you? I think I would too. Because I think there's so many more positions that are important that need to be filled in quarterback. Oh yeah, no 1st round running backs. Here's the thing I wanted to ask you about. I saw a lot of Lions fans thinking that maybe we would go after Saquon Barkley. Maybe we should draft Bijan Robinson.
I have seen that about Bijan.
Here's the thing. Who did the Chiefs just win a Super Bowl with as their running back?
Isaiah Pacheco, Jake McKinnon.
Who did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win with?
Playoff Lenny.
Leonard Fournette.
Washed.
Who didn't... Yes, washed. I mean, the Rams. Who did they win with? Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers? I mean, and I mean, you get my point. I can go on and on. I mean, probably the last meaningful running back on a Super Bowl champion team was Marshawn Lynch. That's probably it. Um,
Yep.
Outside of that, you do not need an elite running back to win a Super Bowl. And the past Super Bowl champions have not had an elite running back. They have above average to elite quarterback play, and they have elite skill position play. That basically, comes down to it. And if their defense sucks like the Chiefs does, their offense is good enough to just say we'll outscore you and we don't care. So I would hope we do not use a first round pick on a running back either, because it's just not necessary. If we want to move on to it from DeAndre Swift, I'm fine with that, but don't replace him with a first round running back because again, so many more positions of need that are of higher priority than running back.
I agree. I agree. And trust me, I am one for taking big shots on big high ticket skill position players. It's fun. You get a new toy. It's like having a new,
Jersey sales.
having a new Corvette in the garage. You want to take it out and you want to go fast. You want to go play in the sun with it. But when it gets in the dog days of winter, you don't want to bring it out. The Corvette's going to get dirty. And it might not be exactly what you need. So, getting something that can be there, what would be reliable to continue with my analogy, in all seasons, could be exactly
Correct.
what the Lions need this year. I don't think it's necessarily the year in the draft to be taking big gambles. Maybe in free agency you could try to pick your poison, because that's kind of what you do in free agency. You kind of have to pick your poison, like I said. But in the draft, I think I think that we'll continue to see what we've seen for the past couple of years is, tough, the right guys that fit the culture, like we've already seen in the news. Dan Campbell's, been interviewing players, and he's only marked a few guys with the it factor that he wants. We'll continue to see those kind of guys. And to be fair, those kind of guys have turned out pretty well for us so far. So
They have.
let's keep it going, and I'm very excited.
As am I. I could have sworn there was one other thing. Oh, there was. Just because we got sidetracked from baseball because we brought up Lamar Jackson.
Sure.
Dennis, because he's gone. I asked him about some of the recent stats that Jeff Passan posted about spring training,
Sure.
2022 versus 2023. So I'll give the rundown, then I'll give Dennis's thoughts because he was pretty fired up last week about the pitch clock, Bob.
I agree.
So here we go. Spring training 2022 versus 23. Time of game in 22, 3 hours, 1 minute. 2023, 2 hours, 36 minutes. Runs per game, 10.6 in 2022 to 11 in 2023. Not that much of a difference, but still a little bit of an increase. Granted, that also comes down to just spring training pitchers are really, really bad. Stolen base attempts per game, 1.6 to 2.4. That is actually, that's almost a full stolen base attempt per game, which is, I think you ran the numbers, it's probably a significant difference. Batting average on balls in play on ground balls, 235 in 2022 to 258 this year. So when you ban the shift, all of a sudden your hard ground balls are actually singles like they used to be. And lastly, 2022 strikeout rate was 23.9%. This year it's 23.1%. Not really too much of a difference there. But I think this, from what we've seen so far in spring training, the rule changes seem to have, in my opinion at least, a positive effect on the game. Now I will read you our friend Dennis's thoughts. Quote, I think the most exciting thing is the increased stolen base attempts. I think that's a really fun potential outcome. Sidebar, that's also something we brought up in the pod a few weeks ago that we thought that could, become an issue, or not an issue, a consequence, and not even because of just the bases being bigger, but also because of the throw over limit for pitchers per inning or per batter. Per inning or per batter. I don't remember which one, but
per
either way,
batter.
per batter, yeah, you can only throw it twice per batter. You throw it over twice, that guy's got free reign to take off and get a pretty good lead. Um, Back into Dennis's quote. That and the increased batting average on balls in play are both pretty cool. I stand by a potential increase in good defensive plays out of necessity being good as well. Shorter game time and increased runs per game, I could care less about. Sidebar, I couldn't care less for the grammar police out there. Shorter game time and increased runs per game, I could care less about, but I guess it comes with the territory. So not too much to say for Dennis about the pitch clock specifically, but I think he'll come around to it. And really, I think his big point last week was some of the controversies that come with batters not being ready, pitchers not being ready. But like I said, I think those things will sort themselves out. And, 2 hours and 35 minutes per game. I saw a chart that charted the average game time length since 1920. And from 1920 to I think like the mid 1980s, every game was at or below 2.5 hours. So we're really not going that far back in time to when games ran a little smoother and we didn't have guys walking all over the mound and changing their batting gloves 3 times. Getting some more pine tar, fixing the belt. And so, I know we don't have to talk about too much last week, but I thought those were interesting stats that I thought the people should know about. You have any thoughts on that, Bob, on either that or what Dennis said?
I was going to say that I think that this is just kind of materializes what we've been saying. It puts some numbers behind it. Very intrigued by the stolen bases. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
I think that's awesome.
Really fun to watch. And I'm also, like you, hard ground balls are turning into singles. And that's
which they should be.
Which is what, yeah, come on, which is exactly right. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a few more dink dankers present in the fantasy baseball league this year, when maybe there wouldn't have been last year. So
correct. Yeah. Only other point I wanted to bring up, literally the next day, the day after we released our last pod, was it the Red Sox that broke out the 2-man outfield
yes,
that
correct.
I had talked about on the pod? So that was just pretty serendipitous that we talked about, hey, maybe this is how teams will get around the shift. And sure enough, literally it was like the next day or the day after that there's a 2-man outfield with the third guy where the old infielder would have used to have been. Other than that, Bob, I'll save it for my loser. Winners and losers, I think we can get into that unless you have anything else you want to bring up in the NBA sphere.
No, not particularly.
Okay. Sure, we can get into winners and losers then. Again, my winner was mediocre quarterbacks getting paid like above average quarterbacks, and good for them. I won't count any man's money. But let's just say I'm glad it's not my franchise paying Daniel Jones $40 million. Your winner, Bob.
Yeah, I was going to go with, actually, kind of mentioned it already, but I was going to go with the Baltimore Ravens for putting a non-exclusive tag, daring people to come get them. And right now, there's really not much of a groundswell of anybody that's looking like they're going to come get Lamar Jackson off their hands at this point. Not to say that, Lamar really probably will ever play for the Ravens again. They may come to a deal, they might not, but having the gall to say we're going to save $12 million of cap space by putting this non-exclusive tag, and if they steal them, and nobody came for them. You gotta love the balls on that kind of decision, and liking when it pays off, at least at this point.
My loser of the week: low top basketball shoes. Specifically Kevin Durant shoes. only Kevin Durant or Anthony Davis could suffer an injury like this in pregame warmups. That looked horrible. I don't know if you saw like the standstill of his foot being parallel with the ground on his ankle with his whole body weight on it. Looked awful. Um, but yeah, I don't know why. I know it looks cooler, but the trend of low cut basketball shoes has always been horrible for ankles. This is just another example of, and now he might be gone the rest of the regular season, which is absolutely crazy. Doesn't even get a chance to make his home debut after who did he light up? Did he light up the Mavs? Who did he light up?
He did.
Yeah, he lit up the
Mavs.
Mavs. And now he's hurt before he even made his home debut by slipping in pregame warmups. I don't know if your loser was Towel Boys, but they are also losers because that man's may have lost his job because of that. Because, yeah, what a disaster. Kevin Durant, your shoes, loser of the week. Tough scenes.
My loser of the week is going to be Brandon Ingram.
Okay.
From the Pelicans. And I don't know if anybody's seen this video, but there's a video.
Is it where he was like biting his teammate's shoulder?
Yes, because he was caught on camera, like sitting on the bench, like next to Jose Alvarado, better known as Grand Theft Alvarado.
That's pretty good.
But like basically leaning over towards him and like putting his head on his guy's shoulder and like looking like he was like biting him, basically. Just kind of like a what are you doing kind of moment, and Alvarado's kind of looking at him like what in the world, but yeah, for some grown men, very very interesting stuff, and yeah, I'm gonna be forced to award the loser of the week.
Bob, will we get DMCA'd by Bleacher Report or the NBA for sharing this clip?
I doubt it.
All right, I'll screen share it for the people who haven't seen it yet. Hopefully...
Keep the volume off, though, if you can.
Okay, I'll keep the volume off. So here we go. I'll even full screen.
That's Brandon Ingram in the middle, for those who don't know, and Jose Alvarado's on his left.
Jose's hairline is looking a bit rough these days.
A little tough there.
Yeah, a little rough, but yeah, here's the video.
I mean, what are we watching?
It was so weird.
Is that, I think that's Juan Hernan Gomez there on the right, too.
Yeah.
Willie Hernan Gomez, maybe. But,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know why Brandon Ingram was acting so zesty.
Is that on Latino night, too? Is that on Latino night? Look at the shirt that Hernan Gomez is wearing there.
I think it is. It's definitely a Los Pelicans shirt. That's for sure.
Oh no!
It's almost Los Pelicans, I think.
Yep.
We are. Unbelievable. But yeah, that's a good one, Bob. I forgot that it happened. Yeah, I don't know if you have any other honorable mentions. Definitely. Oh, Kendrick Perkins.
Yeah.
Kendrick Perkins.
Wow.
I was gonna make him my loser of the week, but then Kevin Durant had that happen, and I couldn't resist. But
yeah,
JJ Redick
put it on.
Absolutely bodied Kendrick Perkins. And let's make something very very clear. In the words of Stephen A. Smith, let me be very very clear.
Crystal.
Kendrick Perkins is an idiot. The only reason he's on TV is because his takes are so bad they're entertaining. That is the only reason he's on TV. His takes are trash, absolute garbage. And then you had First Take coming out the next day and saying we need to correct what Kendrick Perkins said about the diversity on the MVP voting pool. I mean, just an all-time
blunder.
We haven't seen someone.
Those are the facts. Those are the facts.
One of the greatest clips of all time. Those are facts. Those are facts. Those are facts. I mean,
And then
that
they
was
have to come
awesome.
out and give the correction.
Correct. They were in fact not fact. But I mean, we haven't seen this big of a blunder from an ESPN media personality since
Who
Paul
dare?
Pierce posted that Instagram video of him with all the strippers in his hotel room or in his house, whatever that was on Instagram Live. That was the last time we saw an ESPN media personality mess up this bad when he was ripping joints and posting basically nude women on his IG live. Oh, here's another one. Ja Morant,
Yep.
aka Ja Warrant. Um, that was one I saw going around on Twitter. I thought that was pretty good. Um, I mean, Bob, have you ever seen someone try to make it out of the NBA and into the hood? Usually it's the other way around.
I can't say that I have. I mean, I don't think we need to be seeing people flashing weapons, on IG Live. I mean, just that is,
At the club.
at the club. As Shannon Sharp was saying on Undisputed, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Don't hit send. Don't hit record. What are you doing?
I mean, it was also a puny gun. Your Glock put that gun to shame, Bob. Your Glock puts that gun in Weenie Hut Jr. hands. How are you gonna flash a gun that's that so corny, so corny? But yeah, usually guys are trying to make it out the hood and into the NBA, and Ja Morant's got it twisted for some reason. So hopefully he can get his mind right and surround himself with better people. Because it's not like this is an isolated incident. You had the whole deal with his dad getting into it with
Shannon Sharp.
Shay Shay. You had after the Pacers game. Well, they got into it during the Pacers game. Then after the Pacers game, the red dot getting shot.
Oh
the
yes,
bus.
yes, I remember that.
You had the reports of Ja Morant assaulting a 17-year-old that he invited to play pick a basketball,
Yep.
and now you have him doing this. So, um, very unfortunate. You hope he gets the right people around him because he's such an insanely gifted, talented, awesome basketball player to watch. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, another honorable. There's a ton of NBA news. Dylan Brooks, honorable mention loser. I don't know if you saw that clip of Draymond, but Draymond on his podcast absolutely nuked Dylan Brooks. Because Dylan Brooks said that thing like, I don't even know what Draymond does. If he was on any other team, he'd be a role player. They must like him for his defense or something. There's a really good clip of Draymond basically dissecting Dylan Brooks's quote, like statement by statement, and just ripping him for it. I think one of the best bars was um, like their dynasty is going to be after you, not with you, or something like that. It was a pretty hard bar. So yeah, Dylan Brooks, 16th technical foul of the year. I believe it got him suspended for a game. Yeah, he's another loser.
I got my right bench ball if you're ready, Derek.
Go for it.
I'm gonna go with none other than some spring training action. None other than Nick Maytone from the Detroit Tigers, who's been lighting it up in spring training play so far. I mean, we've had 7 spring training games, I think, at this point. But he's batting .294 so far with none other than 2 tanks already. The Tigers have been looking for some shortstop help. Especially since Javi has been, was kind of a disappointment last season, and Nick looks
lackluster.
And Nick has come in and looked quite good in the preseason. OPS of 1.074. This guy's getting on base a good amount. OBP of 368. We take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So keep up the good work, Nick. It's been fun watching you out there. Just seeing some new faces in some Tigers uniforms.
Yeah. My right bench baller, we're gonna go back to March 7th. It's maybe Bob, maybe you can give me a little better indication. He's not maybe a right bench baller. I don't think it'd be fair. I was gonna say Josh Giddey, for his 17 point, 11 assist, or 17 assist, 11 rebound game. But I think he's probably outplayed the right bench baller status by now. So instead, I'm going to go with Bobby Portis. Um, because as Bobby Portis is a role player, and that's it. And he's old. He's old. I mean, never forget the classic Bobby Portis stat line: 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 28 minutes. That classic graphic. Um, Bobby Portis tonight, or no, yesterday, 30 minutes, 11 of 15 from the field, 3 of 4 from three, 13 boards, 2 assists for a grand total of 28 points, and Milwaukee's 118-113 win over the Brooklyn Nets. Maybe Bobby Portis isn't a right bench baller these days either, Bob, but I think he's just like
Respect.
you respect Bobby Portis and you don't expect him to drop 28 points out of nowhere. Speaking of the Bucks, Bob, are they the clear-cut favorites to come out of the East? Without question, unquestionably,
I wouldn't go
the East leaders.
unquestioned, but I would go definitely front runner.
Okay,
Front
because they had
runner.
won what, 16 in a row or something crazy?
They are hot.
Yeah, 28-6 at home, 48-18 on the year. Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
they had a 16-game win streak. It got snapped, and now they're back on a 3-game
I
win
think
streak.
you
So I
could
think
say
they won
that they're
like
probably
19 of 20.
now a clear front runner, but until recently, I wouldn't say they were because the Celtics were playing pretty well, but they've been dropping the ball recently. So, yeah, probably clear cut at this point.
Bob, how about Cleveland? The Cavs.
Cleveland!
Is this the year Donovan Mitchell finally gets a little bit of respect from the NBA?
I think he's got a lot of respect from the NBA. Frankly, I think too much
Okay, fair
for
enough.
not doing anything in the postseason. But if you're asking do I think they're going to have postseason success this season? My answer would be one series tops.
Okay,
That would be
because right now I think they've got the 4-5 matchup. I believe would be them and the Knicks.
they could probably win that.
I think so. Lastly, who's your MVP? Since Kendrick Perkins so eloquently debated Nikola Jokic's merits.
I mean, I've been hearing Jokic everywhere. I haven't delved too deep in the numbers between him and Giannis and Embiid. I think those would be the front runners. I know all of them are playing extremely well. I think I'd probably have to give the edge to Yoke just because Yoke distributes the ball so much more than the other guys and still can score at an elite level. So probably him, but all of those guys are deserving.
More than deserving, yeah. Will the Lakers make the playoffs, Bob?
I don't know, man.
Or okay, will they make the play in?
I think they.
Would it be a failure? Would it be a failure if the Lakers do not make the play in?
I would say yes, but that would mean they would probably they're probably gonna have to make the plan without LeBron. So, I mean, it's tough to say that it's an abject failure because that is their best player not being there. But at the same time, they have shown in recent days that they are capable of beating people even if he's not there. If people show up. Now the problem is that when LeBron comes back, these same people won't show up, which we've seen. Everywhere LeBron goes, we've seen when the spotlight gets on people because LeBron naturally brings spotlight to teams. We are playing on the Lakers too, which doesn't help. But people just tend to wet the bed. So I'm really hoping the AD's looked really good. So but you never know with him. It could be warm ups. We could have another ACL sprint tear with AD. So.
Not street clothes, Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Can't have it. Can't afford it.
Can't afford it.
Got to play through it. But yeah, I'll pull up. I don't know if you have a garbage time takes your money ready, or if while I'm pulling up last week's. I I don't even know what happened in this game, Bob. You might not even know off the top of your head. Our game was the Nuggets and Grizzlies
Yeah.
from last Friday, I think.
What did I pick?
Um,
Because I'm pretty sure I remember being wrong.
you took the Grizzlies and the under. The spread was 5.5 for Denver, and the over/under was 233.5. So what hit?
Well, I took the under. You said it right.
Under was, yep, 233.5.
So the total of the game was 210,
Okay.
113, 117 Denver, who won by way more.
230.
Oh, 230.
113, 117 is
Two-
230. Yeah. Regardless.
No, 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 no. 97 to 113. Sorry, 97 to
Oh.
113. 97 113. Denver.
Yes.
Denver.
They blew them out.
So, Denver won big. And the under did hit. So, I was
Yep.
50
So looks like everyone split. I had the Nuggets and the over, and you and Dennis both had the Grizzlies and the under. So I will get that straightened out, which means through week 1,
500.
everyone remains tied at 500. Depending on how many units you wagered and who you followed, you may be positive. Maybe positive. What you got for this week?
I've got the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a tomorrow night game because, of course, everything's basically finished for tonight. But
Correct.
Cleveland Cavaliers at Miami. Over under to that game is 214. And Cleveland is a 1.5 point favorite. Two teams that are pretty much smack dab in the middle of the East. Very, very good. Both of them, but
You said Cleveland is minus 1.5 on the road?
on the road, yes. And the Heat are the 7th seed in the East, but they're 35-32. And Cleveland is 42-26. Just taking a look at, they actually played. They're actually playing 2 games in a row, which is weird.
One of the classic back-to-backs.
2 games in a row against the same team. And Cleveland won 104-100, not on the 8th. So now technically 2 nights ago, I guess.
2 nights ago for you, yesterday for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you have it. And it was on the road at Miami. So
That's so weird. They're playing 2 games in a row in Miami?
yes.
Usually they do a home and home, don't they? That's super weird.
That is really weird.
Interesting.
Looking at this past game, looks like Donovan Mitchell didn't even have 20 points. Jimmy Butler had 28, and Tyler Hero had 22, and somehow still the Heat didn't do it. I think for that reason, I'm going to take the Cavaliers to cover that 1.5. I think that this is looking to be not quite as close as the first one was. As far as the over-under goes, that's really interesting because the Heat are a good defensive team, and the Cavs actually have some very good defensive players as well. So I'm actually quite prone to take the under, but it's 214, which means any sort of offensive explosion, we're sunk. So I think I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go the Cavs because I think that it's just quite unlikely that. I mean, I think it's quite likely the Cavs just do the same thing that they did a night ago again. Especially when Karis LeVert only had 7 points. Donovan Mitchell didn't even have 20 points. You know, You got to think that those guys must put up more than 25 combined.
So here's something super interesting, Bob.
Yeah.
Just because I was scrolling back because I wanted to see how Miami is doing over the past 5 games.
Sure.
They played the Hawks back-to-back at home right before playing the Cavs back-to-back at home. And then they played the Knicks at home prior to the Hawks series. and then they had a home and home with the Sixers. So they've played 3 out of the last 4 series against the same team twice in a row. Super weird. Um, the Heat have actually, even though in their last 10, they have not been good, split with the Sixers, lost to the Knicks, swept the Hawks, and then obviously lost to the Cavs. Um, hmm. I think I'll take the Cavs as well. Um, and I'm tempted to take the Cavs and the over too, for every reason you just brought up. I don't like to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time,
There's
I just don't see the Cavs only scoring 104 points again. So I'll do it. I'll be a square and also Cavs in the over.
sure.
Um, how's the Kevin Love experiment working in Miami, Bob?
I actually haven't looked. Let me do a quick
Sure.
check into his stats right now. Well, I'm looking at all of his games since February 13th.
Okay.
So about a month of games now. And he has scored double-digit points one time.
How many minutes is he averaging approximately?
Looks like he's averaging, with the Heat so far, 22 minutes a night, which was more than he averaged with the Cavs. And he is scoring less points than he did with the Cavs.
Bob, is that what we call a big yikes?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a yikes. His 3-point percentage is also 10% lower with the Heat so far. So,
Wow.
So, very interesting.
Bob, does Duncan Robinson still play much?
I'll
Does
let
he
him.
get minutes, or is he one of the greatest bag getters of all time?
I think he could be a bag getter. He did not
Oh
play.
no.
He did not play at all versus the Cavs on March 8th.
17 minutes, 6.7 points per game, 2 boards a game, 1 assist per game, and shooting 33.5% from three. Yikes. Yikes. Not the Duncan Robinson fall off, but I mean, good for Duncan Robinson for getting the bag. I mean, he got to that second contract, $100 million man. I mean, you always root for the Michigan men.
I just want to point out, Derek, that I searched Duncan Robinson on Google to look at his stats. On the side of his homepage, it shows like his current team and whatever. And there's a YouTube video that comes up immediately called "The Tragic Downfall of Duncan Robinson" from this season.
Listen, like I said, I don't watch the NBA nearly enough.
Yeah, sure.
But I thought I had remembered he was struggling big
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
I didn't know he was struggling
that big.
that badly. Because I knew last year he was basically unplayable because of his defense. Good for him for getting paid, though. I mean, good for him for getting paid. And I don't got much more to say outside of that. Want to close it off?
At Garbage Time Takes on Instagram, at Garb Time Takes on Twitter. You can find the link to our website down in the description below. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, we're back on the grind now. Getting these pods back up. Dennis, where you at? Hopefully we can get a few more pods going in a row with a full crew. We've been kind of on a spotty attendance recently. So let's hope we can get that around. But good episode today, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, we covered a little more organized than last week, where I was in charge of running the recording and being back from a 2-week absence, not really knowing what to talk about.
Sure.
But I thought this one was really good. A lot of great discussion, covered all the major sports, basically. And yeah, like Bob said, thanks so much for watching. We appreciate the support. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next week for the next video. March Madness, Bob. Will the next Thursday be the first games of March Madness? Is that the first four?
Selection, yeah, Selection Sunday this week, all right?
Correct. Let's see. When's March Madness start? First round, March 16th, 17th. Well, so that'll be next Thursday. Yeah. Next Thursday, we'll probably be finishing up the pod as some games are finishing up. So looking forward to it. Thanks again so much for watching. Without further ado, in 3,
1,
peace.
peace.